Your reaction to the story that took over the league yesterday with Brian Flores. What do you think?
Well, I haven't read the lawsuit, so I mean, I'm seeing all the headlines. He's not wrong. I mean, the Rooney Rule is usually whenever the Rooney Rule is brought up during a coaching search, it's followed by it satisfied the Rooney Rule. I mean, it is in some ways it is a sham. Well, we've got that done. Now we can get on to our coach and our real coaching search. But a lot of African American coaches have dealt with that, and they've dealt with it in different ways. I mean, I remember Herm Edwards going through the same thing, and he ended up getting 2 jobs, with the Jets and the Chiefs. But he was like, wait a second, they're just bringing me in here just to satisfy this rule, before those teams hired him. And, Tony Dungy would probably say something like, well, every interview is a leading to the next interview. So I would say that. So Brian is definitely not wrong. But, for the Giants, when they hired Joe Shane, I mean, I just figured Brian Dable was coming with them. Yeah. Just the way Chris Greer brought Brian with him to Miami. And then he's a candidate for 2 other jobs. So I understand what he's trying to do. I don't know if the timing is the best right now.
Have you come up with yourself just in thinking or heard of a great solution to this problem?
Well, I don't have a solution. I know this. I know great leaders are in short supply at the NFL level. And then at the college level, great leaders, guys that can stand in front of a room and lead men with a real sharp vision. And the same thing with guys that are in charge of building teams. They're in short supply just the way quarterbacks are in short supply. So when you get one that is, regardless of the color, whether he's Tony Dungy or Bill Belichick, when you get those men, you hang on to them. But there's just not enough of them. And it's the same thing with African-American coaching candidates. There needs to be more. But I just think that if you do your homework, you're going to find good men. I think Brian Flores is a good coach. I think he has to learn from some of the mistakes he made in his first stop, just the way Mike Shanahan did, just the way Bill Belichick did. A lot of these guys were much better in their second job than they were in their first job. I think Brian has to, be honest with himself about some of the mistakes that he made in his first stop in Miami.
Baldy, one of the things that was brought up in this suit is the alleged $100,000 from Stephen Ross to Brian Flores to purposely lose games. This may be the biggest thing from the NFL's standpoint in terms of they can't have an integrity of the game issue, but truthfully, how much does this actually get talked about from the higher ups in the NFL about we need to lose so we can get this quarterback or this player?
Well, I mean, first of all, I'm with you on that. It doesn't surprise me that Stephen Ross did it. I mean, I live in Philadelphia. That's the original tank when you talk about the Philadelphia 76ers, and it paid off. They got Joel Embiid, and they, we'll see what happens with Ben Simmons. But look, if the Miami Dolphins had Joe Burrow now instead of Tua Tagovailoa, would the Miami Dolphins be in the AFC Championship game right now? I mean, I'm not saying Stephen Ross is wrong, but it doesn't surprise me that owners think like that. Like, get me the best quarterback any way we can, even if we got a tank.
Yeah.
Now, I've worked for the league. Like, I don't propose that, but that's how valuable these guys are. Yeah. That's how owners think. Not all owners. That's how. It doesn't surprise me that an owner or some owners think that way. I saw it in Philadelphia firsthand with the 76ers, and we knew what was going on, and the coach had to stand up there and take the fall for it. That was there at the time.
I love that you don't totally dismiss it, though, and get on fans who, when their season is lost with hope, just want them to lose out for the better draft pick instead of no integrity of the game. You go out there to win every single game. You understand fans rooting for Team Tank, right?
Oh, totally. I mean, I fight that every year. I remember, I think it was the Jets. I think it was a job. I mean, you could pick any year in any
Yeah,
team.
right.
You know, where you go, why did, you know, I guess it was last year with Jacksonville. Like, why would you try to win a game, you know, when you have the first pick? Now, I fight that with fans all the time. I'm like, no, you're a player in that locker room. You try to win every single game. Like, whatever we always think upstairs, downstairs is the executives, downstairs are the players. Like, I'm thinking, whatever they're thinking upstairs, I played on a 1-15 team. Like, I know what that's like. And I heard it from the fans as a player. But, you know, it's also that team, ignominious as it is, dubious as that is, but I tried to win every game, you know, as that player on that 1-15 team.
Brian Baldinger, Odyssey NFL Insider, NFL Network, joining us on the Diamond Factory Hotline here on Shan and RJ. How are you going to remember Tom Brady? Pretend like I've never, ever watched football before, and I'm like, Baldy, who is this Brady guy the entire world is talking about?
I'd say he's the most consistent athlete of all time. Like you know, I mean, he was the best quarterback in the league this year at age 44. But he was like the best quarterback in the league almost every year over 22 years. Like, we've never seen, at any sport, we've never seen somebody so consistent. Like, I live in a film room, all right? That's my little thing, right? I love watching tape and making these evaluations of players and whatever. But everybody kept asking me, is he changing? Is he slowing down? Is his arm strength the same? You know, and you'd see a throw and you dial up, I don't know, Kurt Warner. Hey, Kurt, what do you think, man? Is this it? Is this, you know, he goes, no, watch the next game. You know, and so the most consistent athlete in any sport of all time. And you put him up there against Jordan or Wilt Chamberlain or anybody. That's who he was.
Explain this. I've always struggled with this because it doesn't fit my pH balance of life. Explain how he was able to do this. He was not highly sought after out of high school. He was not highly sought after out of college. How was he able to do this? Like, how did he get better against better competition?
Well, I mean, some people develop later in life. You know, he was a guy that never stopped wanting to develop. I mean, he was the first guy that I hired. You know, he hired Alex Guerrera to become his personal coach. Like, I'd never heard of anybody doing that. It makes a lot of sense now. But, you know, Willie McGinnis introduced him to him when he was in New England, and he's like, I need this guy. And he used to joke, like, he has his hands more on me than my wife Giselle.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, so, you know, whether it was the diet, whether it was the personal trainer, whether it was his own company, you know, trying to figure out how to get the slightest advantage possible, whether it's recovery or nutrition, whatever it was, he never stopped trying to get better. But then he also had, you know, I do think there's an advantage when you aren't a great athlete from a standpoint of speed. I can take off and run. You have to win from the pocket, the way Peyton Manning did, the way Drew Brees did. There is an advantage to doing that. It forces you to try and find out every single advantage you can get from the defense because you're not going to escape when the blitz gets home. You've got to be able to defeat the blitz. And I think there's an advantage to those guys that know they don't have that silver lining that they can just take off and escape.
Brian Baldinger here on Shan and RJ every single Wednesday, 105.3 The Fan. You know it's a copycat league. Is there something obvious to copycat from the Bengals and the Rams? The Rams with their all-in, forget the draft picks approach. We already talked about Burrow. Style-wise, foundation, the way they were built. What do you think teams are going to try to copy from these two, if anything?
Well, I think the mistake people make, and I understand, you know, they gave up a lot to get Jalen Ramsey and Matt Stafford, and, you know, and that's true. But, you know, Nick Scott is lighting people up at free safety. He was a 7th-round pick. I mean, they hit on their draft picks now. So, you know, Brian Allen's their starting center. I mean, you could go through the list of guys. You know, Greg Gaines, the starting nose tackle. I mean, you go through the list of guys that they have drafted that are good players, but they just weren't first-round picks. So I would say if, you know, like take a look at what Les Snead is doing and what they're hitting on. And, yes, they're sacrificing first-round picks, but they've done their homework on a lot of other guys. So I would say that. And then I'd say for Cincinnati, I did one Cincinnati Bengal preseason game for them this year. And so I got to know Zach Taylor and the organization pretty good just in preparation for the game. And I said back in August, this is the best young roster in the NFL. Wow. So, I mean, you go and look at Logan Wilson, and you look at, the young players that they have, whether it's, Prince, the right tackle, or you look at Hakeem Adeniji who drafts people from Kansas. I mean, so you could go through the roster. And you go all the way up to, Jamar to Joe Burrow. And, they had a big decision to make. Do we take Joe Burrow, or do we take ourselves, Penei Sewell? And they took Jamar Chase. And, Jamar was the right pick. So they hit on the draft picks. I mean, I think that's what I would take away from both teams and where they're at right now and why they're at where they're at.
Is Cooper Kupp the best player on the field when his team's on when he's on offense? Is he generally the best player on the field overall?
Yeah. I mean, he's the best blocking wide receiver I've ever seen. And then his route running, his hands, he's just an amazing, amazing player. For a guy that ran a 4.6 240. I mean, those guys barely get drafted in the NFL, but you would never know. I mean, he runs by people all the time, just like he did for the winning touchdown against Tampa. He just has a very high playing speed, very fast playing speed. But as far as a blocker, I've never seen a wide receiver block like that. And every kind of block, whether it's, putting his shoulder into Fred Warner on a 3rd and 1 or hook blocking on an edge run. I mean, that guy's a phenomenal blocker.